welcome to the Newsbrief podcast, where the everyday Christian can get caught up on a week's worth of news in 15 minutes without opinion and much bias. I am your host, Isaac Lopez, and this is presented by the Life Given Radio. 5 seconds, 3 minutes each. Without further ado, let's jump in. Politics. On his way out the door, President Trump issued a total of 73 pardons and 70 commutations. Commutations are substitutions for lesser penalties, just an FYI. Amongst the pardoned are Steve Bannon, Lil Wayne, Elliot Broidy, and Paul Erickson. Included in his final actions as President of the United States, he rescinded his own executive order that he put into motion at the very beginning of his presidency. This order required executive appointees to pledge the following: I will not, within 5 years after the termination of my employment as an appointee in any executive agency in which I am appointed to serve, engage in lobbying activities with respect to that agency. I will not accept gifts from registered lobbyists or lobbying organizations for the duration of my service as an appointee. I will not, at any time after the termination of my employment in the United States government, engage in any activity on behalf of any foreign government and foreign political party which, were undertaken on January 20th, 2017, would require me to register under the Foreign Agents Registration Act of 1938 as amended. In effect, this order would hopefully stop the revolving door of the same people in power. A recent report from Wall Street Journal reveals that President Trump is interested in starting his own political party called the Patriot Party. This is more of an idea than anything else, but will be interesting to keep tabs on Donald Trump as he leaves the presidency. Out with the old and in with the new, President Joe Biden has certainly not been quiet as his administration gets into full swing. According to his White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki, on Wednesday, President Joe Biden will reverse a ban that doesn't allow transgender people to serve openly in the military. In another move, President Joe Biden will nominate Rachel Levin as his Assistant Secretary of Health. Rachel Levin is the top health official in Pennsylvania and is a transgender woman. Despite leaving the presidency, Donald Trump is still facing investigation for the Capitol riot that occurred earlier this month. Although he wasn't impeached by the Senate in his time in office, there is no talk of dropping the charges of inciting violence. Senator Mitch McConnell is willing to give him until mid-February to arrange for an appropriate defense. He is quoted for saying, Senate Republicans are strongly united behind the principle that the institution of the Senate, the office of the presidency, and former President Trump himself all deserve a full and fair process that respects his rights and the serious factual, legal, and constitutional questions at stake. In conclusion, some protests turned violent in Portland and Seattle following Inauguration Day. In Portland, 8 people were arrested by police for destroying federal and private property. And that wraps up our political segment with 5 seconds to spare. On to sports. President Joe Biden signed an executive order that says children should be able to learn without worrying about whether they will be denied access to restroom, the locker room, or school sports. So boys are now effectively allowed into female sports. A bylaw in California passed by the California Interscholastic Federation forbids student athletes from participating in high school sports and club sports. Also, according to this same report, California's COVID-19 suspension of youth sports is set to expire this week. Despite having played games all year long, the NFL has canceled the 2021 Combine, where rookies came with the hopes of impressing teams with their capabilities. That has been nixed. Along with the NFL, Philip Rivers has declared that he will retire. He played 17 years in the NFL, 16 with the former San Diego Chargers, and 1 with the Indianapolis Colts. During that time, he ranked 5th all-time in the NFL in passing yards with 63,440, and 5th all-time in passing touchdowns with 421. Along that same note, the NFL Championship takes off this week as my Chiefs take on the Buffalo Bills, and the Green Bay Packers take on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the NFC. Good luck to all those teams, except the Bills. In health, our next segment, we are flying through this actually right now. We finished up sports with a minute and a half to spare, and we'll move on to Biden's plan when it comes to the coronavirus. I reported on this in the midweek Inauguration Day special, but wanted to loop back to it. President Joe Biden plans to have a national vaccination campaign that will involve in the giving of 100 million shots, which is enough to cover 50 million Americans with a vaccine that requires 2 doses. Florida recently prioritized full-time and part-time citizens for COVID-19 vaccinations in their state as they make an effort to cut down on people coming to Florida to specifically receive the virus. That was their reason for going to Florida. President Biden signed a flurry of new executive orders on Thursday. Included in this is a mandate that people wear masks on public transportations. It also requires international travelers to produce a negative COVID-19 test and then go through a quarantine measure upon arrival. He also established a COVID-19 equity task force so that minority communities are not underserviced by the government. In New Mexico, a sheriff has a backbone. A Sheriff Wood in New Mexico posted a letter on Facebook ordering the governor of New Mexico, Michelle Lujan Grisham, to cease and desist from harassing businesses in his county. And I quote, "It has been brought to my attention that under your authority, government officials have been acting under color of law within the confines of Lincoln County, pursuant to a public health order. It has been reported to me that local businesses have been interrupted and business owners have been threatened with unreasonable fines and threats of imprisonment without having committed any criminal offense." The sheriff tells the governor no. And that concludes our health segment with a minute to spare. On to faith, family, and freedom. We will start off with the highlight of this segment. Missouri becomes the first state to not practice abortion. Our Operation Rescue recently reported that 45 abortion clinics closed in the United States last year. The report was based on data gathered between November 16th and December 16th, 2020, with information from every abortion business across the United States. As a result of the closings, Missouri is the first state that does not have an abortion practicing facility. One abortion clinic remains open in St. Louis, but they currently refer women to another clinic across the Mississippi and Illinois if they want an abortion performed. Now, on to all things Parler. The following slew of stories should be labeled as Part 4 in the Parler debacle. Parler's attorneys recently requested a preliminary injunction from the court arguing that Amazon violated laws against monopoly in favor of Twitter. The judge didn't budge. She is quoted for saying the likelihood of Parler prevailing on its claims is not a close call. Parler's allegations at this time are both inaccurate and unsupported and are disputed by evidence submitted by Amazon. When it rains, it pours, I guess. The Democratic House Oversight Committee chair sent a letter to the FBI requesting them to look into Parler for the part that they played in allowing rioters to organize on their app. She also encouraged the FBI to look into alleged ties that the company may have in Russia. Parler's CEO is optimistic despite all of this because he believes that they have found a platform. John Matza, their CEO, is confident that the website will be back up by the end of this month. They are currently working with Epic servers and domains. With Parler's decline and fall, social media websites such as Gab and MeWe boom. Gab reported that it had gained 1.7 million users with 52 million website visits as of January 15th. Gab also has their web servers with Epic, which is the exact same server that Parler is looking to join. In Moscow, recently, their city council amended their emergency order. There are no longer any religious exemptions to the mask mandate that they have put into place. In conclusion, New York says no to the government flag. New York has banned the use of government flags on state grounds. The state of New York will no longer sell the Confederate flag or any other thing that is considered a, quote, symbol of hate, unquote. And finally, some good news. Let's end this show on a high note. A report from the Idaho Statesman shows a sweeping proposal to emergency powers in Idaho. The House State Affairs Committee is hoping to limit the governor's emergency powers, requiring it to end after 30 days unless extended by legislature, and also declaring all jobs in Idaho essential, while at the same time, and I quote, forbidding the suspension of any laws or constitutional rights during emergencies. Also in Idaho, there is a ban being introduced that would deny state funding to abortion clinics. Switching gears, a new treatment, niraparib, will be available to women in stage 3 and stage 4 of ovarian cancer. This treatment is anticipated to slow the spread of the cancer. It is hailed as a major milestone. A new bike path is set to span the entire United States. The Great American Rail Trail will be almost 6,000 kilometers in length and will cross 12 states. It should service nearly 50 million people within 80 kilometers of the route. Now, in conclusion, despite many of the marches moving to online, the March for Life in Holland, Michigan is set to happen this Saturday. The executive director of Right to Life in Holland, Ann Wilson, is quoted for saying, "We walk to mark the anniversary and mourn the loss of 60 million unborn babies and show support for the sanctity of life." Our thoughts and prayers go out to this movement. If you're interested in supporting the Newsbrief podcast, share the show and spread the word. No opinion and very little bias may go a long way. Now, if you enjoy the Newsbrief podcast, you may like the Brief newsletter, which will continue to have reporting like this. Sign up for that in the link below. If you want to drop a tip, email me at thebriefnewsbrief@gmail.com. Also, if you want more reporting from more reporters who share a similar vision as myself, check out the Life-Given News, a site dedicated to reporting in succinct and honest ways. If you're interested in writing for TLG, reach out to me at thelifegivenandreceived@gmail.com. Follow me on the social medias if you want. If not, just stick around for this podcast. If you want to see what else I'm up to, you can find me on Facebook, MeWe, Gab, Parler, if it ever comes back, as Isaac Lopez. I am on Twitter as Isaac Lopez _TLG. We'll see how long I'm on there until I'm banned again. You can also find the Facebook page for the Life-Given News and Radio on Facebook as, you guessed it, the Life-Given News, and on Instagram. We have 2 accounts, at TLG News and at the Life-Given Radio. In conclusion, remember who the real enemy is. Ephesians 6:12. God bless, and I will speak with you next Friday.